When Yo Goen stepped into the Ferris wheel cabin, she felt completely disconnected, like she'd slipped into another dimension, far away from the real world. The producer was giving instructions for the shoot, but the girl didn't hear a single word. When she snapped out of it, she asked them to repeat everything again. The producer explained that even though this scene was the climax of the episode, the filming would be done only with the small camera installed inside the cabin. She said she needed them to show cute, natural emotions, and that she was counting on them a lot. Yeo Goen wasn't sure she could do it. Just knowing she had to sit on this ride again made her feel sick. Her whole body was trembling, and to at least try to control herself, she clenched her fists tightly on her knees. But nothing helped. Yeo Goen tried to convince herself that everything would be fine, that nothing bad would happen, and that she just needed to pull herself together. Seo Bayomi looked at the girl skeptically. He was convinced she was just acting to draw attention. He'd seen tricks like this too many times. Had everyone really become so oblivious that they couldn't recognize a lie? After years of working with actors, you get used to all kinds of performances. But when Seo Bayomi stepped closer, he heard how heavily she was breathing, and he could clearly see her shaking. Yeo Goen was rubbing her hands together nonstop, not even paying attention to Seo Bayomi beside her. She couldn't control her emotions at all. He leaned down next to her and immediately asked what was wrong, why she was trembling so much. Holding her by the shoulders, he tried to bring her back to her senses and asked her to lift her head and look at him. She sat with her eyes closed, saying she couldn't look outside, and breathing was getting harder for her. Seo Bayomi had no idea why this was happening, but he could clearly tell she was genuinely unwell. At first, he wanted to start filming as planned, but he realized that in her condition, Yo Goen simply couldn't participate. It occurred to him that he needed to turn off the camera for a moment, and then figure out how to calm the actress down before they continued. In an instant, the camera shut off, and they were finally able to talk and deal with the situation privately. The producer and crew didn't understand what had happened or why the camera had suddenly been turned off. Seo Bayomi wasn't sure where to even begin, so the first thing he did was reach out, gently touch her hair, and pull her into his chest. He wrapped his arms tightly around her, trying to steady her trembling. He wanted to warm her with his body and show her she was completely safe. Kneeling in front of Yo Goen, he held her firmly. She was surprised by his sudden gesture and felt awkward. He pressed her head to his chest. He didn't want her to look outside, and he knew she would feel calmer that way. The Ferris wheel cabin slowly rose to the top, creaking loudly with every movement. This scared Yo Goen even more, and she began trembling again. Even though Seo Bayomi had turned off the camera, he couldn't stop the Ferris wheel, so he had to hold the girl tightly to make her feel less scared. When he hugged her, it felt much better, and she began to feel calmer. Right now, she didn't want him to let go. There were moments when she unclenched her fists, wanting to hug him back, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. It was strange. Yo Goen had never imagined she'd be hugging Seo Bayomi on a Ferris wheel, and that he would show care for her like this. After a while, Yo Goen realized she could breathe more easily, and her trembling had lessened. The man noticed it too, but continued holding her to make sure she truly felt safe with him. Her breathing was normal, and the trembling had nearly disappeared, but a new feeling emerged, immediately catching her attention. Goen didn't realize at first that the rhythmic thumping wasn't coming from her. It was coming from Seo Bayomi. Interesting. What is this? The girl thought. It was a strange sensation, yet it was so touching and calming that it soothed her even more. Once she was completely calm, she was ready to talk about the time when she was little and visited an amusement park for the first time with her dad and brother. Her mother had passed away very early when Yo Goen was still very young, so her father had raised them alone. But she didn't remember him very well, since he rarely came home, and it wasn't like he ever played with them. She and her brother were just in elementary school. One day, her father said he was taking them to the amusement park, and Yo Goen was thrilled by the idea. As she told the story, she started to get nervous again, clenching her hands into fists. When she and her brother got on the Ferris wheel and it rose to the very top, they noticed their father wasn't where he had promised to wait. The amusement park was crowded, making it difficult to find him, so the kids shouted loudly for him. While they were on the Ferris wheel, their father simply vanished into the crowd, leaving the children alone. He left them without thinking about how they would get home or what would happen next. Yeo Goenen felt it was still painful to recall. Even the memory of riding the Ferris wheel made her feel so bad. Although she thought her story sounded silly, she felt better simply by no longer keeping it inside. Even though she no longer wanted to cry, tears continued streaming down her face without stopping. Seo Biomi was glad she had shared her problem with him, and to show his support, he gently wiped her tears away. Seo Biomi believed that her childhood memory didn't define her at all, and she didn't need to worry that anything was wrong with her. But her father? He was a real jerk. And honestly, why were so many parents so irresponsibly selfish? Yeo Go-eun was surprised to hear him say that. Did that mean Biomi's own father had also been a terrible man who never cared about raising him? When she finally calmed down, Seo Biomi suggested she look outside. They were already at the very top. Yeo Go-eun turned her head, and for the first time, she could look out the window without feeling afraid. She could actually look down at everything and take in the whole view without trembling or crying. From up there, the entire city stretched beneath them, glowing with bright lights, so close it felt like the sky itself was within reach. She could have never imagined the Ferris wheel would offer such an incredible view of the city. And strangely, she wasn't shaking anymore. In fact, she felt calm. Maybe even too calm. Was this really all because of Seo Biomi? He also admitted the view was even better than he'd expected. In that moment, it felt like both of them were voicing their thoughts out loud without even realizing the other could hear. The girl wondered if this was his first time at an amusement park, but he avoided the question, saying it didn't matter anyway. To her, amusement parks always seemed like the perfect place for the best dates. For the first time, Seo Biomi smiled sincerely. Did she really think he would ever come to a place like this with a girlfriend? Everyone knew he went straight to the hotel. She didn't want to continue that conversation and quickly replied that she never said anything like that. Though yes, it did sound exactly like him. Seo Biomi gently took a strand of her hair and brushed it against his face, asking if she expected anything different from him. She recognized that familiar Seo Biomi again. He hadn't changed. And no, she didn't expect anything else. It was just a random thought. Maybe he could be better than she originally thought. Until now, she had never opened up to anyone or relied on somebody like this. But she surprised herself by feeling relieved, almost comforted. For the first time, she felt calm and ready for a life without constant fear. Even if she didn't want to admit it, being in Seo Biomi's arms felt nice. Something she would have never imagined before. The man wrapped his arms around her again. This moment was theirs and no one else was around. If she wanted, she could keep relying on him. But he joked that it was only allowed for today. It was strange. Why did she even like this? Just being near him used to irritate her to the point of a breakdown. Maybe she should push him away, but her body didn't listen. This had never happened to her before. Not even with Sungwon Oppa. Yet here she was, letting this troublemaker hold her. She tried to argue with herself, but the truth was undeniable. His embrace felt warm, and she didn't want the ride to end. Perhaps Seo Biomi really could be a good person, at least when there were no cameras and no people around them. Their eyes met, and they were so close, still wrapped in each other's arms. Was he hoping for a kiss too, just like she was? Did he really want to kiss Yeo Go-eun sincerely in this very moment, and not as one of his usual tricks? They both wanted to give in to their desires, and while no one was watching, let those desires finally take over. It was hard for her to gather the courage to hug him, but she wanted it more than anything. Slowly, she tried placing her hands on his shoulders. When she realized how easy it actually was, she threw her arms around his neck and pulled him close, taking the initiative. Just when Yeo Go-eun was beginning to feel the warmth of the embrace and the sweetness of the kiss, he suddenly stopped and tried to get up. She didn't want to stop and didn't even pay attention to what was happening outside the cabin. Seo Biomi was listening intently to something and sensed a strong scent in the air, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Somehow, Yeo Go-eun began to understand why this man had such a notorious reputation among the public. He kissed her quickly again, but something kept forcing him to pull away, as if he was afraid of something. From outside, someone was calling for Yeo Go-eun, asking if everything was all right. But for some reason, the two of them didn't answer for a long time. The producer was standing below, calling for Miss Go-eun and Mr. Seo Biomi, already waiting for their cabin to reach the ground. She asked if they could hear her, because the camera suddenly shut off, and the filming crew hadn't been able to work all this time. From the voice alone, they understood it was the producer. She was worried, and the whole team had been trying to fix the camera issue, but nothing worked. Seo Biomi figured out they must be very close to the ground now, which explained why they could hear the producer's voice more clearly. They had just a few minutes to compose themselves before stepping out, and no one would ever guess what had happened inside that cabin. Yeo Goen finally snapped out of it and realized, holy crap, what had she just done? Why didn't she think earlier? She was making a huge mistake. After a failed shoot at the amusement park, Seo Bayomi had an unavoidable meeting with his furious CEO. He was extremely irritated and wanted to know why the shoot got stopped and what really went down between the two of them. When Bayomi tried to say something, Lee Wee-younger warned him not even to think about twisting the story or acting all innocent since producer Young had already spilled everything. Seo Bayomi wondered what the CEO wanted to hear from him, since producer Young had explained everything and it was clear he believed her. Even if he told his side, Lee Wee-young would still be on the producer's side and wouldn't believe him. Seo Bayomi decided to just explain things the way they really happened. The shoot started again, but some problems popped up. Sitting in the Ferris wheel cabin, they spent a lot of time but couldn't film everything because of camera issues. As soon as the wheels started moving, the camera cut out, but they didn't realize filming had stopped. For some reason, the producer thought Bayomi had turned off the camera and blamed him for it. When she asked the man why the heck he turned off the camera, he didn't say much, just didn't understand what was going on. It was clear Yo Go-eun wanted to explain something, but Bayomi stopped her and didn't give her a chance to justify herself. He thought the cameras had just broken because they bought super cheap equipment and needed to replace it. But producer Young insisted everyone saw him turn them off. The producer was told the park was about to close, and they needed to figure out what to do next. Looks like they missed the Ferris wheel scene that was supposed to be the climax of the episode, and they couldn't return empty-handed. So they wanted to ask park staff for a little more time to reshoot it. When Yo Go-eun heard from the producer that they needed to reshoot the scene and do another take on the Ferris wheel, her hand started shaking again. Bayomi wanted to take Yo Go-eun's hand and support her so she wouldn't worry. He whispered in her ear that they needed to go back because they had a job to finish. The producer agreed to the reshoot, and that's what they'd do. They needed to gather themselves and start the second take. Then the producer looked at the actors, wanting to check if they were willing to keep going. But she noticed that Miss Go-eun and Mr. Bayomi had vanished. Looking around, she confirmed they were nowhere to be found. Yeo Go-eun's phone rang, and she saw it was Sungwon Oppa calling, and he was being really persistent. She didn't want to talk to him or explain anything, so she decided to reject the call. She felt guilty for acting like that with her manager, but she had no other choice. She knew he'd understand and forgive her. They stood in a dark corner, watching the whole crew search for them around the amusement park. Yeo Go-eun thought they'd probably have to go back anyway, but Bayomi noticed that just one look from her told him she'd never done anything like this before Viksha. The girl was surprised and confused, but Bayomi immediately added that running away wasn't really her style. Although it was uncomfortable to say, he was right. She felt like a teenager going through puberty again. The man assured her everything would be fine if she did it now. He wouldn't believe her if she said she didn't like it. She thought that before meeting Bayomi, her life had been calm and balanced, but with him, everything was starting to change. Even though she agreed to the escape, she still felt guilty for behaving badly toward the crew and the producer. Talking with Lim Hyo-jung led nowhere. He still didn't understand what had happened on set. The CEO had a massive headache because it was really hard for him to sleep after Bayomi's antics. The story with the necklace wasn't over, yet he was already running from the set. Who knew when this could hit the press? Bayomi was outraged because when the CEO said it, it felt like he was a total scoundrel. Lim Hyo-jung was angry, having turned a blind eye to all his antics so many times, consoling himself that he'd been magnanimous, but probably in vain. Just think, Bayomi had dragged Yo Go-eun into this, and it was unclear what he was thinking. Miss Go-eun seemed like a little kid. She was successful in her career and had never been involved in any scandal. Besides, didn't Bayomi know society's demands on female celebrities were way harsher? Maybe for him it was just a joke or something else, but step by step, all this could seriously damage Miss Go-eun's image. Listening carefully to his smartest CEO, Bayomi admitted he'd made a huge mistake without thinking about the consequences. Lim Hyo-jung had one more question for Bayomi, so he asked him to stay a few more minutes. When he suddenly said he wanted to move into House S, where Miss Go-eun lived, it seemed like he was showing some interest in her. But knowing she was a company employee, he left it to them, hoping they'd handle it on their own. If not, they'd have to discuss it right there and then. But if the man genuinely cared about her and was serious about pursuing a relationship, he had no problem with it. Beomi smiled in surprise at what Lim Hyo-jung was saying. Had he ever seen him seriously pursue anyone? Beomi was frustrated because he worried why the CEO called him to the office, only to realize it was such nonsense. The man thought Seo Beomi was telling the truth, since there was no way he'd seriously flirt with anyone. They finished discussing the issue, and Beomi was about to leave the CEO's office. As he was getting ready to leave, Lim Hyo-jung wanted to add something else Beomi needed to know. The secretary of the boss called him, and it seemed like he'd seen scandalous articles about him, so big trouble could be coming. Lim Hyo-jung didn't know how to deal with all this, since they told him to monitor Beomi's behavior more closely. Beomi smiled and said it was his job, and he got paid a lot for it, so he had to work this hard. When he left, slamming the door loudly, the CEO just sat there, not knowing what to do next because Beomi's stubborn nature only added more trouble. Yeo Go-eun's manager was also heading toward the CEO but ran into Seo Beomi in the hallway. They greeted each other, pretending nothing had happened, but Beomi was surprised why the CEO was meeting the actress's manager. He apologized for intruding, but wanted to talk about Miss Go-eun's stalker, the one he mentioned earlier. Seo Beomi was surprised. Since they hadn't had any joint matters before, why did this meeting feel like they were negotiating something? Lee Wee-young asked how things were progressing. Sungwon pulled an envelope from his pocket and said it had arrived in the mail a few days ago. They were stuck in one spot, and he couldn't just stand there and wait because it worried him a lot. These letters always came in a yellow envelope, which stood out from the rest. Sungwon didn't like this, and it had been going on for months. These people always sent revealing photos. Beomi had never done anything like this, but today he really wanted to hear what men were talking about. He thought it was strange when the manager said these people had recently started sending simple everyday photos of Miss Go-eun, and the manager had a bad feeling. Was the manager sure these weren't paparazzi? Nearest surveillance cameras, sender address, there was nothing to go on. He even checked with the security company, and they said it was impossible to find anything at all. Yeo Go-eun said these were just ordinary fans, and she could handle the problem by ignoring them. Sungwon suggested she contact the police or hire a bodyguard, but she said it would just create unnecessary noise and refused. Lim Hyo-jung really needed some fresh air, so he suggested continuing the conversation outside. Beomi needed to quickly step away from the door without raising suspicion, since the men were rushing outside. Beomi managed to hide really fast, and it seemed the men didn't notice him as they walked past. He decided to take advantage of the moment while the office was empty and check what photos were in the envelope. He did it very quickly, and when he took out all the photos, he was surprised at what he saw. They were ordinary photos, nothing special, but they caused concern because someone was constantly watching the girl. Looking closely at the photos, you could tell they were taken somewhere near her house. This meant the person who kept photographing Miss Go-eun was nearby, and they had never noticed him. Filming continued for the movie where Yeo Go-eun was the lead, and she actually enjoyed this process more than being on a reality show. It was really easy for her since her filmography included a wide variety of roles. The scene had the main guy confessing his love and proposing marriage to her. She was impressed, and it seemed she didn't even have to act deliberately. Those words really got to her. And now it was her line, but she froze on the spot, saying nothing. The director tried to fix the scene, but she didn't respond to his cues. Because of that, the director had to stop filming and give her time to regain her composure and continue acting. They told her she needed to perform the next scene, but she apologized and politely asked for another take. The director suggested taking a short break first. During the break, Yeo Go-eun wanted to reread the script because she had somehow forgotten all her lines after her partner's line. Her partner noticed she had frozen so unexpectedly and wondered if something had happened, since it wasn't like her. Could it be that it was that noticeable she was a little tired because she'd slept badly last night? She just couldn't focus or work productively. Or maybe she had completely lost her mind, constantly thinking about Seo Beomi, that scoundrel who got stuck in her head. She kept remembering that kiss in the Ferris wheel cabin, and strangely, it felt good to her. Even thinking about the hug and kiss with that man made her face flush. She was still embarrassed for falling for his provocation. She covered her face with her hands, thinking she'd really lost it. How could she look him in the eye in the next scene? A girl peeked into the dressing room and told Yeo Go-eun that it was time for lunch. At the table, the conversation was about how not everyone had heard of the new director, who was very famous and made million-dollar films. Those who hadn't heard wanted more info about him. Others explained that this director, Kim Jae-joon, had already earned a spotless reputation. Some had heard about him long ago, but why was Yo Go-eun, the most popular actress, finding out last? This man had won many awards abroad for short films despite being very young. Word was, this time he was planning to shoot a feature film. Yeo Go-eun couldn't hold back and blurted out that the movie would be called Secret Message. She felt embarrassed for her impulsive behavior, smiled, and said she acted on emotion because she liked the script. The crew wondered if Miss Go-eun had known all this beforehand. In any case, everyone was eagerly anticipating the movie. It was likely to become a hit, but they were curious which actors would star in it. While everyone talked about the new director, Yo Go-eun decided to quietly leave the room, but one girl noticed and asked where she was going. She smiled and said she needed to visit the restroom and they could continue their interesting discussion. She needed to find a place without anyone around where she could calmly talk on the phone. While searching the contacts, she thought, of course she knew about Secret Message and director Kim Jae-joon. She had agreed to film with her best friend just to get there. She was curious why she found out that the director was already in Korea, but hadn't been informed at all. What was going on? Had the CEO lied and made her act in this ridiculous show with Seo Beomi just to distract her? Maybe he had forgotten their agreement entirely. Yo Go-eun said, her voice full of anger. The man tried to explain that it wasn't like that. Her application had simply been rejected. She was shocked and even lost the ability to speak. But he promised he'd take care of it, so why didn't he keep his word when she trusted him? The man explained that even though he was a famous foreign director, who would have thought he could reject Yo Go-eun herself? He thought he'd just have to adjust his schedule. Sure, he would accept her, but he never expected him to flat out refuse. The CEO's words of apology meant nothing to Yo Go-eun. She was very upset because she hoped to act in this director's film. Couldn't they do anything now? She wanted to know the reason for the rejection. Maybe her acting wasn't good enough. But that wasn't it. The CEO hinted her image was too commercial. Neither the CEO nor the actress understood what the director meant. This couldn't be left as is. The director had a false impression of her because he judged her image without a personal meeting. Lee Wee-young tried to convince the actress they should find another project, but Yo Go-eun asked if he still had the director's contact info. When the CEO asked why she needed the contacts, she said she needed to hear the real reason herself and make sure they understood each other correctly. Getting the director's contact from the CEO, Yo Go-eun decided not to delay and go see him immediately. She was already waiting for the meeting with the director, holding the script for Secret Message. She was nervous but hoped to hear a positive response. It was time to enter the director's office, so she knocked on the door, waiting for permission to come in. When the door opened, she saw a very young man who didn't look like a talented and famous director at all. He smiled and immediately recognized the famous actress Yo Go-eun. She froze again, not knowing what to say back. He extended his hand and said it was a pleasure to meet her. He said his name was Kim Jae-joon and that he was the director who made many short films. Finally, she said she was Yo Go-eun and that it was a pleasure to meet him too. She had heard he was young, but he seemed like a real teen. Maybe her peer. The director was surprised that the actress requested a meeting today, given how busy she was and that she wanted to discuss things immediately. She sat comfortably but hid her hands under the table so he wouldn't notice them shaking. She decided to get straight to the point to not waste his time. She started by saying she really liked the style of his projects. She had watched all his films and thought she would love to be part of his work someday. The director listened to Yo Go-eun carefully while sipping his coffee. But sometimes he felt he didn't fully understand why the actress wanted to meet him. The actress continued, explaining that she had heard he had already rejected her application. The man confirmed it. It was unpleasant, but true. She felt upset hearing that, but really wanted to find out the reason for the rejection and what influenced his decision. Yeo Go-eun took out the script and said she had studied the storyline carefully and was confident she could handle the lead role of Sum-young well. Her acting might not meet his standards, but he could decide that only after an audition. The director smiled and immediately said no, thinking there was no real need for that. So there was no point in wasting time since they were both busy people. It was a great honor for him that an actress of her level was interested in his film. He didn't want to discuss the fact that she was the best actress, but he didn't think his decision would change. He was confident that Yo Go-eun had already heard he rejected her because of her image. She had, but she didn't understand why he considered her image too commercial. He had looked through all the films she had acted in and thought it would suit her better to be in a commercial movie than the one he planned to shoot. She was surprised that a director of his caliber had reviewed her entire filmography and paid attention to her acting. The man felt he had fully answered all of Yo Go-eun's questions, so their meeting could end there. Everyone knew Yo Go-eun was an excellent actress, but the director wanted something raw and unpolished. He needed an actress who could achieve that. She was upset, but from the director's explanation, she understood that her experience and flawless acting had actually worked against her in this case. Yeo Go-eun thanked him for taking the time to meet her and for explaining why the role couldn't go to her. She had nothing more to say, so she handed him an envelope, hoping he would accept it. The director took the envelope and asked what was inside. The actress explained it was an invitation to the premiere of her new film. She didn't care how he perceived her as an actress, but if he wanted to evaluate her, she had a request she hoped he would answer later. Yeo Go-eun asked him to give his evaluation only after he had seen her act properly. If the director thought the meeting was already over, then why was he still sitting there, not trying to leave first? She decided to take the initiative and just left. Kim Ji-joon watched her leave with a smile, holding the envelope close to his face, fully sensing her scent. The elite residential complex was especially empty this evening. There wasn't a single person strolling freely or breathing in the evening air near the building. Seo Biomi's apartment was filled with silence, making it the perfect place to rest after a long day at work. The young man lay on the couch, taking this moment to think about what he had just heard from the girl's manager. The information was important, but for now it was still unclear to him. His thoughts were interrupted by the phone signal notifying him of a new message. Seo Biomi reluctantly reached for the phone to see what it was and who it was from. The messages were from actress Kim, asking what he was doing today and whether he wanted to go for a drink. The following messages were identical, suggesting they have some fun since she was free today. Then there were messages from manager Park Jung-woo, suggesting he rest today, and asking whether he was spending time with another girl. These messages were meaningless to him, so he simply tossed the phone aside. Seo Biomi tried to find the TV remote but couldn't remember where he had put it. He could watch something interesting since he never had time for it. He accidentally landed on a channel where the TV club team had prepared an interesting story for everyone today. The young man flipped through the channels but couldn't find anything interesting. But when he heard that the story was about a scandal involving someone everyone knew, Seo Biomi, and someone currently in the spotlight with him, looks like ordinary gossip as always, the young man thought. Haven't the reporters tired of all this yet? The next news was about the president of Chinsen Group, Seo Yoon Chang, donating 1 billion won to the Hankook Children's Oncology Hospital. The young man thought, do they really have no other celebrity news? Why are they talking nonsense? But then he paused, realizing Seo Yoon Chang's charitable work had been known for years. He has a big heart and gives hope to all suffering children who have endured difficult trials of fate. Even now, many children have to fight for their lives, hanging by a thread. Nevertheless, they will always be supported and encouraged not to give up on their hopes and dreams. The smile on the robust man's face, and his words that children are the future, seemed unconvincing coming from him. Listening to the nonsense high-ranking officials and company presidents were saying, he didn't understand why they publicized their good deeds if they could be done quietly. The same applied to President Seo Yoon Chang. He was a true hypocrite and liar, always able to manipulate people's feelings for his own benefit. This behavior dated back to his childhood, when he had a birthday celebration. The boy expected fun and games, but instead watched strangers having incomprehensible conversations. The boy was very bored, waiting almost the entire evening for his father to arrive. Little Biomi was urged to start cutting the cake, but he wanted to wait until his father arrived. But the president, as usual, was held up at urgent meetings, and everyone understood he couldn't make it to the celebration. Each year, the same situation repeated. Indeed, it was his cold-blooded father who didn't care about his son's feelings. Then came the unpleasant moment when the father said from now on he should use another last name, and Seo Biomi had no words to respond. The guy wondered, in a conversation between two influential people who hadn't seen each other for years, what his father expected. The father handed his son a newspaper covering Korean news about rookie actor Seo Biomi, who had again been involved in a scandal, but this time, who was the woman with him? The father thought debuting in the entertainment industry wasn't enough for the guy, so he decided to make him a well-known actor, appearing on the front pages of newspapers. The man thought he had sent him abroad to live quietly, So why suddenly did he return to Korea and cause such chaos? Had he decided to ruin his reputation? Bayomi wondered what his father expected after having driven out his only son without ever showing any sympathy. Even now, though his father had been absent from his life for years, he still wanted to play this role. Even as a child, the only thing Seo Bayomi did well was creating problems for his father. Now, having grown up, even if you want to live like a scoundrel, you can just do as you please. But the man couldn't allow him to disgrace the Jinseong Group's name. That's why no matter where he went, he shouldn't be called his father. And he would never acknowledge that Seo Bayomi was his son. It was his father, a man who had never recognized his existence, never shown care, or inquired about his personal life or successes. Seo Bayomi looked at this man, unable to imagine how he could do good deeds without remembering he had a real son. On TV, the man said he wanted to thank everyone who came to the studio and shared a great event with him. Seo Bayomi could no longer listen to this hypocrisy and lies, so he pressed the remote and turned off the TV completely. The young man felt upset. No matter how unlucky he had been, everything has a limit. And why now? He had to see this inspiring face, where every word was a lie covering all his sins. He got up. He couldn't just sit at home because being alone worsened his mood and anger started to show. Throwing his jacket over his shoulders, he decided to go out for a drink, but didn't want to do it alone, so he planned to find someone to keep him company. He called someone who could genuinely share the evening and support him in a difficult time. But that person was a bit busy, so they agreed to meet a little later. Seo Bayomi noticed something strange about the elevator, though he couldn't tell what exactly. The elevator stopped on the 30th floor, but besides Yo Go-eun and him, no one else lived on that floor. Seo Bayomi immediately thought that maybe Yo Go-eun had returned home, so he decided to wait for her. But given the circumstances, Seo Bayomi apologized to his friend and said that his plans had changed, so he ended the conversation. He approached Yo Go-eun's apartment, thinking nothing bad would happen if he simply asked her to have a glass of wine with him. He knocked firmly on her door, trying to make sure she knew it was him. Was she not home, or had she simply not heard him? Bayomi continued knocking for some time, but the door remained silent. She wasn't home, but he noticed again that the elevator was still on the 30th floor. So, who was there? It was strange and truly a mystery to him. Everything seemed suspicious, so he decided to wait a bit to figure out who was in the elevator. He recalled the conversation between the manager and CEO about a stalker following Yo Go-eun. In the photos, there was nothing unusual, just her everyday life. Then he decided he needed to forget about it, since it wasn't his business and he wouldn't get gratitude in such situations. So he decided to continue with his own matters and not worry about things that didn't concern him. These were Yo Go-eun's personal affairs, and she had the manager and CEO to help her. He didn't even notice the bright dot blinking near the elevator button by the door. Standing near the actress's door, Seo Bayomi had no idea that an unknown man was watching him. He tried to call the elevator, but for some reason his gaze kept returning to the place where the surveillance was installed. Finally, the elevator arrived and the young man entered. At that moment, he decided not to wait for his neighbor and intended to have a good time. The secret observer was pleased that the young man left, so he wouldn't interfere with watching actress Yo Go-eun. The man was now sure that Yo Go-eun was not at home, so he watched the small gap intently, trying not to miss the moment when she would return. Yo Go-eun, as always, was coming home very late, so Sungwon gave her a ride in his car. On the way, she told him about her meeting with director Kim Jae-joon and how it had gone badly. The manager was surprised that her audition was rejected. The director said that an actress of her caliber wasn't suitable for the lead role in his film. Sungwon fretted over what to do next, since Yo-vi really wanted that role. She, however, thought getting rejected was something unavoidable. What puzzled her the most was the reason the director had given. It didn't matter, and talking about it wouldn't change anything. So for her, it was over before it even began. Sungwon was upset, but he understood. The girl let out a sigh and decided to accept the situation as it was. Maybe it was for the better, and this really wasn't her main role. Yeo Go-eun asked her manager if he wanted to go grab a drink with her. Of course he wanted to, but he had to prepare for a wedding shoot early the next morning. Still, nothing bad would happen if they just went for a quick drink. Go-eun didn't insist. If he wanted a successful shoot, he should hurry home. Besides, his sister had been waiting for him for a long time. At that moment, Min-hyuk was traveling abroad, and it was too late for her to call anyone. She really didn't want to drink alone at that hour, so she thought of another option, meeting Seo Beomi. It was very convenient since Seo Beomi was her neighbor. The manager thought they were already close enough to share a beer, or maybe he was wrong. The last time she had disappeared from the set with Seo Beomi, she couldn't even imagine how nervous they both were that day, including Beomi's manager. Could it be that Sungwon figured it all out and didn't mind that she had been lying to him while trying to excuse herself? Yeo Go-hyun felt very embarrassed and apologized to Sungwon for what she did. She couldn't even understand what had pushed her to do it. The man thought she didn't need to apologize. She had simply managed to surprise him, and she knew it very well. He had been watching Go-eun since she was a child actress, just starting her acting career. Honestly, it pained him to see her having to adapt to such harsh conditions from such a young age. Just think, at the age when kids are supposed to act like kids and hang out with friends, Yeo Go-eun had to behave more maturely than her peers. But their Go-eun had grown, and now she was causing trouble with her best friend. Maybe he could say that this secret was a little bold, or even amazing. The girl didn't know how to respond Sungwon, knowing he had always been there for her, supporting her during the toughest times. On top of that, she insisted that she and Seo Beomi weren't that close, and Sungwon had no right to think otherwise. While they chatted pleasantly and calmly, they didn't even notice when they had arrived at the elite residential complex, standing in front of the actress's building. Yeo Sungwon thanked Sungwon for the ride home, but it was time for her to go. He wanted her to wait a little, promising he'd leave after dropping her at the entrance. She reassured him everything was fine. Could it be that he was doing all this because of a stalker? Even if it was a stalker, the worst he had done was send a few photos. But Sungwon thought everything this jerk did was dangerous, and he hadn't been caught yet. She had already been followed by stalkers several times, some incidents far more serious. Moreover, the manager knew that more security had been hired in their building. Did she think that when Go-eun found out about the increased security, he'd feel better? Yeo Go-eun thought they could even publish another article, which she didn't want. They might write that the manager escorts the actress to her door. She thought there was no need to say more. She would just go alone. Go-eun insisted that she wait a little. When she didn't listen at all, he accepted it. If security had improved and there were many cameras, maybe things weren't as dangerous as he imagined. He thought everything should be fine. There were still many people in the building, and it wasn't too late. Yeo Go-eun calmly approached the door to her apartment and typed in her electronic key. As she entered the code, she heard a strange noise on her floor, so she stopped to listen carefully. She looked around, but there was no one on the floor. The thought that it might be the stalker watching her sent a chill down her spine. She glanced at Seo Beomi's apartment. Maybe the noise came from there, and the man was entertaining some new crush. She thought Sungwon really was overly protective sometimes, crossing boundaries, which could be annoying. When Yeo Go-eun opened her apartment door, a letter fell out in front of her. This time it wasn't in a yellow envelope, just a plain white sheet. It said that someone wanted to see her and suggested meeting today. Yeo Go-eun looked around to make sure no one was on the floor and that she could safely enter her apartment. But before doing that, she bent down to pick up the letter from the floor and heard footsteps nearby. It happened so suddenly that she didn't even realize someone had grabbed her hand and pulled her toward them. All she saw was a man's hand, rough and strong. He held her tightly by the hand, warning her not to try to pull away. The stranger smiled and asked what Miss Go-eun was doing, saying he had been waiting for her a long time. Yeo Go-eun tried to look at him carefully, realizing the man seemed familiar. She tried to break free and at first succeeded a little, but there was nowhere to run. The jerk tried to hold her tighter, grabbing her shoulders and pressing her against himself. She continued struggling, but he was stronger than her. She tried to scream and call for help, but only she and Seo Beomi lived on that floor. She looked toward the door of Beomi's apartment, shouting louder, hoping he would hear and save her. She called his name several times, but the man smiled and said it was pointless because Seo Beomi had already left. The girl realized no one could save her. Only the two of them were on the floor. She had to accept it and obey him. The man ordered her to stop screaming and trying to escape, suggesting she go inside. He pushed the door open and pulled her into the apartment, thinking it was a good idea. Go-eun realized that if the apartment door closed completely, no one could rescue her. So she left her shoes at the threshold, creating a barrier to keep the door from shutting. The apartment was dark, the door open, and her shoes on the floor. Seeing this, Seobyeomi might guess that something had happened when he returned home. Yeo Go-eun was terrified, trapped in the apartment with a criminal who was holding her by force and had no intention of letting her go. She cried and begged the man to release her, telling him how much pain she was in. During the struggle, she dropped her handbag and her phone fell out. Finally, she managed to break free from the stranger's grasp, demanding that he let her go and never touch her again. He still had the chance to leave quietly, and this whole ordeal could be forgotten. Though she didn't know his intentions, it was clear he wasn't planning to back down. But what he wanted, he wouldn't say. The man closed the door and, with a smile, said he had finally waited long enough for this moment when they could be alone together. Yeo Go-eun had never been in a situation like this before and had no idea how to behave so as not to provoke the criminal. He said that she couldn't imagine how long he had waited for this moment. But of all people, it was Seobyeomi who had moved into the apartment directly across from hers. Because of this, he had to study that idiot's daily habits and schedule, delaying his own plans. Yeo Go-eun knew that, as a notorious partygoer, if he went out at night, he wouldn't return until morning. It just so happened that Seobyeomi had left again that evening, just a short while ago. Right now, it was just the two of them there. As the man spoke, he kept closing the distance between them, and Yeo Go-eun slowly backed up. But she eventually ran out of space, the wall pressing against her back. There was nowhere left to run, and she had no idea what to do next. From the first glance, it was obvious the man looked completely unhinged. When he tried to approach Yeo Go-eun, she immediately warned him to keep away, or else she couldn't guarantee his safety. There were no blind spots in the security cameras on this floor, which meant the guards would be arriving soon. Yeo Go-eun wanted to tell him it was better to end this now. The man couldn't understand which guards she was talking about. Could it be that she really had no clue? In that case, he needed to explain everything in detail. He smiled, speaking to her with irony, as if to say, does she really not know who he was? The man lifted his cap, hoping that when Yeo Go-eun looked at him, she would immediately recognize him, since they had met almost every day. Just a few days ago, they had met, even talked for a few minutes. And could it be that she really didn't remember him? Yeo Go-eun looked at him closely and immediately remembered where she had seen him before. It was strange because she never would have guessed it was him. A few days back, when Sungwon drove her home, they ran into the security guard of their complex and spoke about increasing security. At that time, the man had been friendly, and it was impossible to imagine that he could be capable of stalking and spying on people. That guard she always greeted on the first floor, there was nothing suspicious about him. He was just an ordinary, unremarkable man. The man smiled, happy that Yeo Go-eun had finally remembered him. He had been her fan and admirer. She asked why, if he was her admirer, he had acted so vilely toward her. But the man saw nothing wrong with his actions. After all, he was simply in love with Yeo Go-eun and couldn't help himself. The girl shivered at his words, fully aware of what crazed fans were capable of, knowing they didn't recognize boundaries in their actions. He had first seen Yeo Go-eun in a famous magazine and felt as if he had finally found the single ray of light in his gray, miserable life. Like a lunatic, he remembered every detail of her face perfectly. It resembled that of a real angel. That's when the idea struck him. He had to know everything about her. Every detail, every aspect of this actress fascinated him. He searched for all her films, series, and interviews, watching them multiple times. If there was a fan meet or movie premiere, he was always there. But even that wasn't enough. He wanted to see more of Yeo Go-eun. That's why he decided he had to always be near her, watching not only her work as an actress, but also her personal life. And that's exactly why he had been the one leaving those photos under her door all along. For him, it was nothing, and it gave him pleasure to instill fear and the sense of being watched. Those photos were his own handiwork. She couldn't imagine how often he carried them with him, able to look at them at any time. The man pulled out the remaining photos from his pocket and tossed them at Yeo Go-eun's feet. Bringing them up to her apartment was a piece of cake. No one would suspect him as long as he worked as a security guard in the complex. Plus, controlling the security cameras without his colleagues knowing was easy enough. And right now, it was his shift, so no one else would be coming. As he told his soul-crushing story, Yeo Go-eun kept her eyes on the door, needing to stay close to it. She tried to figure out a way to reach the spot closest to the door. It was time for Yeo Go-eun to get closer, as he wanted to touch her, to make sure she belonged only to him. She stood frozen, not even attempting to move, which infuriated him. He wanted her to obey his requests the moment he voiced them. A thought struck her, and she decided to act on it. It was her only chance to escape this room and survive the crazy fan. She stomped on his foot with all her strength. The man was shocked by the sudden pain, though it didn't seriously injure him. She tried to run as fast as she could before he recovered and began chasing her, but all her efforts were in vain. As she neared the door, she felt him closing in and realized she wouldn't have time to open it and escape. Running, she begged him to leave her alone, to let her go, hoping things could be different between them. The fan wanted nothing more to listen to. He threw her to the floor and pinned her beneath him. He sensed she didn't want to be in the same room with him, but he believed she'd have to accept it. The man was a complete psycho, tying her hands tightly so she couldn't get up. He told her not to worry, claiming he had no intention of doing anything weird or harming her. He just wanted to take a few photos of Yogo-eun for himself because he was such a passionate admirer. But as he lifted her shirt, he tried to expose her body. Yogo-eun couldn't understand what he wanted or why he did it. He pressed his cold, huge hand against her body, attempting to slide it under her shirt. Yogo-eun tried to wriggle away, but he held her firmly in place. She scolded herself for not being more cautious. The stalker was so close. Why hadn't she noticed him at all? She should have told Sungwon earlier. Maybe this wouldn't have happened, and the police could already have put this man behind bars. At that moment, Seo Beomi entered Yogo-eun's apartment. At first, he was shocked by the scene in the middle of the room. His first thought, what happened here? And why was Yogo-eun lying on the floor with her hands tied? Seeing the scattered photos on the floor, he wondered if he was misunderstanding things or if this was indeed the stalker who had been tormenting the actress for a long time through 96. The guard was surprised to see Seo Beomi in Yogo-eun's apartment. He shouted at him, not expecting to see him before morning. The girl was overjoyed to see Seo Beomi. She knew he would definitely help her get rid of the crazy fan and save her. Seo Beomi recalled the conversation between the manager and CEO about the actress having a crazy stalker. He was furious, realizing she had been in danger. The enraged guard, fists raised, tried to approach Seo Beomi to hit him for always lingering near the actress and preventing him from getting close. He hated Seo Beomi for standing in the way of his dreams, and now, even this close to Yogo-eun, that infamous troublemaker had reappeared. Calling the psycho a piece of trash, Seo Beomi was ready to protect Yogo-eun, not just with words, but with physical force. Finally, it was all over, and Yogo-eun was no longer in any danger. The only thing left was to properly deal with the criminal. Seo Beomi immediately called the security service and reported their employee, who had committed a crime on the property he was entrusted with. The director and senior security guard offered their apologies for the inconvenience. But that wasn't enough for him. Did they really think they spent so much money on living in a luxury complex just to tolerate incidents like this? Moreover, it was truly bizarre to have a stalker inside a security organization. Perhaps they thought there was some sense in it. The representatives of the security company didn't see it that way. They were genuinely embarrassed. They tried to apologize sincerely, but Seo Beomi thought anyone could have done that. He offered to forget the whole incident, but with one condition. They had to take that damned stalker away and leave the apartment themselves. The stalker looked like someone who could shock even experienced security guards. He was bruised all over, with no part of his face untouched by marks. When the security representatives looked at him, they were surprised and asked Seo Beomi what had happened. He replied that nothing terrible had happened to him, but if a single word about this leaked to the press, he would not hesitate to press charges. And in those charges, he could list enough reasons to make them fully accountable. The security company understood immediately. They didn't need a disgraceful reputation either, since they were considered one of the best services in the area. The security representatives took the scoundrel with them and even closed the door behind them. Seo Beomi and Yogo-eun were left alone in the apartment. The girl sat on the couch, still unable to recover from the horrifying events. She couldn't even imagine that something like this could happen to her. Beomi knew he needed to help her calm down, so he decided to stay close to her for a while longer. First, he offered her a glass of water. Drinking it would make her feel much better, allowing her to breathe freely and calmly. She agreed to drink the water and thanked him for saving her and caring for her. She couldn't even fathom what could have happened if he hadn't come to her apartment in time. At that moment, countless thoughts ran through her mind, and she was genuinely filled with terror. It felt as though her life had stopped, and everything she did was in vain. Seo Beomi considered these thoughts normal under such circumstances. There was nothing shameful about them. But she was curious how the man knew there was a stalker in her apartment since her security guard had assured her the person had long gone. He explained that a few days ago, he saw photos the stalker had taken in the CEO's office. All of them were near their building, taken whenever she went to work or returned home. Judging by that, he assumed the suspect had been very close to her, meaning he was well acquainted with her daily schedule. But today, when Yo Go-eun went to work, the elevator was still on their floor, even though no one had come up. Seo Bayomi initially decided to ignore it, thinking it was a simple coincidence, but something still felt off, so he returned to check everything. When he came back and saw that everything was exactly as he suspected, he realized his concerns were not unfounded. Now the girl understood that certain things had raised Seo Bayomi's suspicion, and he hadn't ignored them but decided to investigate. Could it be that she mattered to him, and he cared about her? Yeo Go-eun was in a post-traumatic state, and finally tears started rolling down her cheeks. She tried to imagine what could have happened if Seo Bayomi hadn't arrived in time. Seeing her start to cry bitterly, Seo Bayomi tried once again to make sure she was truly okay. Yeo Go-eun grabbed him by the jacket and pulled him closer. She wanted him to stay near her because it made her feel safer. She apologized and asked if he could stay in her apartment for a little while before deciding to leave. The man agreed, fully understanding Yeo Go-eun's state and glad to help her in such a situation. Although it was very late, almost midnight, he was still in Yeo Go-eun's apartment. The girl decided to offer Seo Bayomi a drink, thinking it would help them both relax a little. He considered it a good idea. Coming from her, it sounded perfect. Just imagine, Seo Bayomi had seen actress Yeo Go-eun under circumstances that no one could even imagine. Then he noticed a childhood photo of Yeo Go-eun, realizing her eyes and smile had shone brightly even as a child. But he also noticed she wasn't alone in the photo. Next to her was a younger boy, so it could be assumed he was her brother. Yeo Go-eun checked her fridge, and all she had was a bottle of wine. She wondered if it would suit Seo Bayomi. Once again, she thanked the man for what had happened, openly expressing that she hadn't expected his help. Honestly, Seo Bayomi hadn't planned to save her from the stalker beforehand either, so everything was fine. He smiled and joked. Was Yeo Go-eun really thanking him? This was a historic moment, and would she regret her words later? The girl said he had already made her regret saying that, but she still wanted to add more. In that stalker situation, it seemed to her that he had completely lost control and acted recklessly. Thinking back on the moment, he couldn't fully reconstruct the scene. Everything was like a fog, as his anger had overwhelmed him. If Yeo Go-eun hadn't stopped him in time, something irreparable could have happened, and Seo Bayomi might have ruined his life and reputation. Due to the severe beatings, the stalker could have died, and the newspapers would have immediately reported that Seo Bayomi had committed a terrible crime. The girl was frightened. She had called for him for a long time, but it seemed like he couldn't hear her. Why had he been like that? Could he not control his actions, and why was Seo Bayomi so aggressive in his anger? The man couldn't explain. In any situation where his anger flared, he became uncontrollable and couldn't stop on his own. And if something happened to a girl known as his best friend, right in his house, he would feel uncomfortable. Such an answer shocked Yeo Go-eun. Couldn't he have softened it a little so it didn't sound so harsh? It was painful to hear. Indeed, why would someone like Seo Bayomi go so far? And because of that, she wanted to take back her words of gratitude. But whatever the reason, she still meant it, and her gratitude for being saved was there, regardless of her motivation. Looking at Yeo Go-eun, Seo Bayomi realized she was already quite drunk, even though she denied it. She simply hadn't had alcohol in a long time, and this wine was really tasty. It was the first time he had seen Yeo Go-eun like this. She had always had the image of a proper girl who never drank and never lived a wild lifestyle. The girl noticed that Seo Bayomi was also a little tipsy, but his face hadn't flushed at all, even though he had drunk quite a lot. She thought there might be more awkwardness between them after the kiss, but thankfully, there wasn't. She exhaled in relief. During this pause, Seo Bayomi wanted to ask Yeo Go-eun something. He was curious about her relationship with Dorian from the popular pop group Heroin Suits. The girl immediately changed expression. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't know what he meant, but Seo Bayomi quickly explained that he had seen them together on the stairs in the broadcast center. The man with mint-colored hair. He wanted to know what kind of relationship they had, if they were secretly dating. Yeo Go-eun explained that they were just acquaintances who had greeted each other. A misunderstanding arose because Seo Beomi realized she was lying to him, while Yo Go-eun wondered why he was suddenly asking about it. He was only asking because he had noticed them together in photos taken by the stalker. Also, Doran was constantly hanging around her apartment. In reality, Doryun was her best friend. They were very close, and he came here to meet her. Mentally, she didn't understand why she felt the need to justify herself to this man. Seo Beomi still didn't believe Yo Go-eun was telling the truth. He got up to come closer and look her in the eyes. The girl thought he was just curious about her relationship with Doran. But Seo Beomi was more interested in finding out directly from Yo Go-eun what their relationship truly was. Lately, they had spent a lot of time together, and intimate moments had occurred between them. The girl thought their interactions were purely friendly, something she hadn't expected before. Yo Go-eun's answer didn't please him. She could be honest right now and tell him how she truly felt. He promised it would stay between them and no one else would find out. Seo Beomi said that he was about to kiss her now, and this kiss wouldn't be just a friendly one. At those words, Yo Go-eun blushed again. But from her gaze, it was clear she wasn't against the kiss. In fact, she liked his proposal very much. The man said she could look away if she didn't want the kiss. But if she didn't mind, she could relax and give herself to him. She replied that of course she didn't want to, yet for some reason, she didn't try to look away from Seo Beomi. She stared into his eyes and tried to hug him in return. She waited for him to stop talking and finally act, to kiss her properly. She wouldn't refuse this act, though she might regret it later. Maybe it was because she was already too drunk. Seo Beomi couldn't wait any longer and bravely leaned in to kiss her again. A new day began as usual. Actress Yo Go-eun was rushing to work, despite having had a rough night and being in a bad mood. Sungwon had already arrived at her house, waiting for her to come out so he could drive her. But besides him, a large number of reporters had gathered, eager to get an interview and learn all the details of the recent incident. When the door opened and she was about to step out, she didn't expect to see so many people in front of her house. Everyone immediately rushed to her, trying to be the first to ask a question, but the actress had no intention of holding a press conference or making any comments. Although her night had been tough and she wasn't feeling great, she still looked perfect, as always. The press swarmed her from all sides, taking photos. They were curious whether it was true that she had recently encountered a stalker and whether she had taken time off due to injuries from the incident. Sungwon tried to shield her from the reporters and quickly get her into the car. The actress's manager was concerned about what the journalists were doing outside her house. If they didn't leave, he would call the police and some disciplinary measures would be applied. He advised the actress to hurry and get into the car quickly, as these reporters wouldn't give up easily. Once they were in this car, they could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The whole chaos reminded the actress what it was like working in the entertainment industry. These few days off had been so peaceful and calm. Sungwon felt guilty for not being there at the right moment to protect her from the stalker. But she didn't need him to say anything. It wasn't his fault, so there was no need to apologize. She was just unlucky and it wouldn't happen again. The manager still wanted to apologize, but the actress warned that if he said sorry, even once more, she would find a new manager. Did he really want to end their partnership? The manager was on the verge of tears. Even though he was a man, he couldn't control his emotions. The CEO advised the actress to take a week off, but she only took a few days. That was enough for her. Too much rest would make her lose motivation. The actress knew that the filming for the next episode of The Best Friends Forever would happen today, so she was curious about the location this time. Today, filming was scheduled at the aquarium. The manager remarked on how beautiful the locations for the show always were. Going to the aquarium after the amusement park, didn't it almost feel like a date? The actress arrived on time at the filming location and surprisingly liked it. Unlike the amusement park and Ferris wheel, the entire crew warmly welcomed the actress to the set and noted that, as always, she looked stunning. There were also many fans eager to see the actress up close, but the staff wouldn't let them get any closer, which left the fans very disappointed. They didn't want her to leave so quickly, but she had to start working. The crew was already waiting. Sungwon felt like he had to quickly head down to the parking lot to greet everyone else, and the actress agreed. As she greeted everyone, it seemed she hadn't seen them in a long time. Surprisingly, she missed her workdays a lot. Then she heard a male voice calling her, rough in tone. Her mood instantly shifted as she realized who was behind her. The girl said to herself, could it really be Seo Beomi standing right behind her? The man was pleased she recognized him without even looking back. He thought it was a great honor to be recognized just by his voice. But didn't she think it was time to drop all formalities? The crew watched as the two main stars of the BFF playfully argued. Yeo Goen didn't want to hear this from a man who had just said hey to greet her. But he was curious. When did she become so cold? Had she already forgotten their kiss a few days ago? Yeo Goen got annoyed. Did he really want to talk about that right now? But their argument was interrupted by the producer, who greeted her. And of course, Sobeomi. The producer had heard about her stalker incident, so she asked how the actress was feeling. Yeo Goen thanked her for caring and said she was fine. Seo Biomi was offered a microphone. The producer wanted to confirm if it was true that the security caught the stalker as soon as he entered the apartment. The girl confirmed it was exactly like that, but she thought it seemed as if Seo Biomi had already told them what to write. The producer was briefed that everything for filming was prepared and they could start shooting. The most famous producer gave a few hand claps, signaling everyone to get ready and begin filming. Now they could start filming, but first, the producer wanted to go over today's script. The assistant sound engineer wanted to attach a microphone to the actress without distracting her while the producer explained the script. Before entering the aquarium, they planned to shoot a cafe scene on the main camera. Only after going inside could they move freely, as everything would be filmed with hidden cameras. When the actors approached the cafe bar, they noticed an advertisement for the seasonal drink, a red bean latte. Yeo Goen tried to smile subtly, remembering the situation from the BFF special shoot when she had ordered this drink for Seo Beomi. Seo Beomi ordered an Americano, but it wasn't for her. It was for him. He expected Yeo Goen to place her order, but she hadn't chosen yet. She wondered if he was about to order something too bitter for her again. But he surprised her, saying he wanted a caramel macchiato with syrup and lots of whipped cream on top. Then he asked Yeo Goen to confirm his order, unsure if she would like the drink. The girl was surprised. He remembered her preferences and knew exactly which drink was her favorite. Seo Biomi noticed that she drank her beverage quickly and concluded it must be really delicious. When she asked how he knew which drink she liked, he said he needed to know a lot about her. Yeo Goen was pleasantly surprised, remembering that last time he had ordered her a triple Americano even without knowing much about her. That was true, but he wanted a little revenge when Yeo Goen had once ordered him a gross red bean latte. Passing by a display with exotic rare fish, Seo Beomi noticed one that looked like Yeo Goen. The fish was cute but funny. To Seo Beomi, though, the resemblance was striking, even though the girl denied it. The crew watched them through video cameras, laughing as the pair playfully argued. The producer thought today would make for an interesting episode. Yeo Goen loved walking around the aquarium. It felt like an incredible illusion, taking her back to her childhood. It was the girl's first time at the aquarium, while Seo Biomi had visited as a child during a performance. For him, it had been the worst show ever, designed to showcase how happy and close-knit their families were. His father needed to appear in public to take a few family photos, but Seo Biomi was bored. At his age, it wasn't fun. The man promised his son that Secretary Jung would take him around the aquarium later. But little Seo Beomi wanted to explore the aquarium with his father, not with someone else, even though Secretary Jung was a cheerful man. However, his father ordered the secretary to walk around with Seo Beomi and, if they ran into paparazzi, to make sure to bring him back. These memories were unpleasant for him because no one ever considered what he truly wanted. Plus, he wasn't allowed to act like a kid since it could affect his father's reputation. Yeo Goen was ready to move on and suggested to Seo Beomi that they look over here instead, as this area looked incredibly beautiful. She smiled, wanting her best friend, Seo Beomi, to check out the sharks and notice how much they reminded him of himself. But he had a much better idea than just walking around and looking at different types of fish. The man grabbed Yeo Goen's hand and silently suggested she quickly follow him. She didn't know what he had in mind, but she immediately went after him. The girl asked where they were going. Seo Beomi decided to take her to a place where hidden cameras couldn't film anything. Finally, they reached a spot without any cameras, allowing the man to do things that couldn't be shown on the show. Yeo Goen didn't understand what he was up to. Didn't he know they were still in the middle of filming? He should step back immediately and they'd return to the set. He was curious how Yeo Goen could become so cold as soon as they were out of the camera's view, even though they had already kissed twice. Now she understood why this man had a reputation as a big troublemaker who constantly broke filming rules and ignored contractual agreements. She didn't even know what to say at first, But then she noticed that at the beginning of filming, they had been wired with microphones. And although the crew couldn't see them, they could hear everything they were saying to each other. Yeo Go-eun covered the mic with her hand and whispered that he was acting crazy, and she didn't really like it. Didn't he know their microphones were on? Moreover, she didn't know that Seo Go-eun was the type who considered kisses something very significant. Her words made Seo Bayomi pause. To him, real kisses were special and played an important role in his life. Honestly, his first kiss had been accidental. Her beauty and reputation were known throughout the country, and of course, he had been aware of them too. But more than that, her reactions to certain things had seemed very touching to him. What is he talking about? Thought the girl. Didn't he say he wasn't planning to get close to her and that it wasn't in his plans? Had he really said that? Seo Bayomi didn't remember. Yeo Go-eun wanted to know why he had even moved into her house in the first place. Seo Bayomi said that everything he had said before had been a lie. Honestly, Yeo Go-eun was completely his type. When the girl thought he was crazy, Seo Bayomi realized he was truly starting to like her. Usually, he couldn't stand serious relationships, but right now he was ready to make an exception if it was her. Yeo Go-eun didn't understand what he was trying to say. Was he joking again or saying something he'd deny later? Seo Bayomi was serious, more than ever. He dared to ask Yeo Go-eun to go out with him. The day had been long, so the girl returned home exhausted. Filming had lasted almost the entire day, and she planned to rest properly. Without even changing clothes, she collapsed onto her bed, feeling completely drained. Thank goodness she had nothing scheduled for tomorrow, so she could dedicate the day to resting and handling personal matters. She was upset about what had happened yesterday, still reeling from the overwhelming experiences that had unexpectedly come crashing down on her. Seo Bayomi had asked her to go out with him, and it was completely unexpected coming from someone like him. She was genuinely surprised, but knowing his unpredictable nature, she realized anything could be expected from him. The man whispered it to her, and she couldn't tell whether he was teasing her or speaking seriously. A crew member approached them, apologizing for interrupting, but said they had an important message. They needed to reshoot the opening scene at the aquarium. Yeo Go-eun was confident they would nail it on the first take, but they were informed there had been problems with the microphones and everything they had said so far hadn't been recorded. They both knew the equipment was fine. They had just covered the mics so the crew couldn't hear their conversation. Seo Bayomi quietly whispered to Yeo Go-eun that he could give her time, and she could give her answer later. Yeo Go-eun checked her phone and noticed 2 missed calls from Seo Bayomi. When he confessed like that, it was completely unexpected, and she wondered how she was supposed to respond. She realized he wasn't as unpleasant as she had thought. Sometimes she even liked being near him and didn't want him to leave. Even so, those feelings weren't enough for her to date him or spend all her free time with him. Moreover, she recalled some unpleasant moments she had witnessed firsthand and could never forget. She had constantly seen him with other women, even in intimate situations. As expected, it was hard to forget such things. She would always feel that other women had touched him and that he could live a reckless lifestyle. Another message came through on her phone, starting to annoy her since she wanted to be alone and gather her thoughts. The message was from Seo Bayomi, asking why she wasn't answering his calls or texts. Did she plan to ignore him? She didn't like messages like this, as he was pressuring her and expecting a quick response. Yeo Go-eun decided to turn off her phone for a while so he wouldn't bother her. As soon as she peacefully lay down on her bed, someone rang her doorbell. At first, she thought it was Seo Bayomi, so she didn't want to answer. But when she heard the key turning in the lock, she guessed who it might be. Not now, she thought, not wanting to see anyone or talk about what had happened. Her brother entered the apartment and immediately noticed her, hurrying over to ask if she was okay. She didn't understand why her brother seemed so anxious, bombarding her with questions about her well-being. It was Yo Min-yuk, and he really scared her. Wasn't he supposed to be on his trip right now? He explained that he had come straight after returning because he wanted to find out what happened with the stalker. Yeo Go-eun was surprised. Had her brother really heard about all this? He genuinely cared about her, and she hadn't answered his calls. Of course he had heard everything. Hadn't the stalker broken into her apartment? Why hadn't she told him? Why did he have to find out from the news? She couldn't contact him because he was abroad, and if she had told him what happened, he would have caused a huge fuss and returned immediately. He wanted to know what happened to her, what happened with the stalker, and if he had really been arrested. But Yeo Go-eun thought it would be better to keep Seo Bayomi's involvement a secret. saying that the authorities had arrived quickly and taken care of everything. In any case, her brother had arrived just in time as she was starving and he could have pizza with her. Though slightly annoyed, he agreed to eat and ordered Neapolitan pizza with extra garlic sauce and beer instead of cola. The delivery was quick as the pizzeria was nearby. Her brother wanted her to tell him everything, what had happened, as it was the first time he had heard of someone he knew being stalked. Yeo Goen explained that it had been a man who had sent her very strange photos for a while. It turned out he was actually a security guard in the building and seemed psychotic. Her brother slammed his cola on the table, angry that she hadn't told him earlier. The girl saw that he was genuinely upset, but she couldn't just bother him, thinking the photos were just the antics of a fan. Her brother berated himself for not being able to protect her, remembering how she had always protected him in their childhood. When she had been in danger, he hadn't been able to help, and it troubled him deeply. Yeo Goen felt comforted that her brother cared so much about her and was grateful that she had always been there for him, preventing others from hurting him. She smiled, trying to cheer him up, and said that her Doryun had been a real hero. But he didn't want her to call him that, even though his friends had given him the nickname. Once he had gotten very drunk and spilled all his secrets to his friends, who then nicknamed him Doryun, saying he seemed crazy. When Doryun asked how her new show's filming was going and what had happened between her and that guy, showing her Seo Baomi photos on his phone, although she wanted to tell her brother everything, she couldn't fully understand their relationship herself, and there was no way she could mention that he had asked her out. She said it was just as it seemed. They were filming here and there, and nothing special happened. But her brother didn't believe her, sensing she was hiding something again. Even if something happened that she thought he wouldn't approve of, her brother would still be on her side. Yeo Go-eun wanted to know what Minhyuk was really trying to say. At first, he didn't want to do it, but then decided to show her what he had seen in front of her house. Someone who looked a lot like Seo Baomi was coming out of the building. Why would he be there if not to be close to her? She needed to answer honestly. Had they grown closer while filming the show? The girl jumped and immediately told her brother nothing like that had happened, and it wasn't his business what went on between them. He needed to understand her correctly. This wasn't how it was. But her brother still didn't understand why he had come to her house. She wondered if she should tell her brother that Seo Baomi had been living on the same floor as her for some time. Eventually, she admitted to her brother that the man was her neighbor. She didn't know that this news would provoke such a strong reaction in him. He wanted to know everything, how it happened, when, and why. Yeo Go-eun remained calm, saying it had just happened recently. He had moved in simply because he wanted to. Minhyuk had never liked this Seo Baomi, especially after he started filming with her and even moved into the same building. He probably thought he was trying to woo her. Yeo Go-eun wanted her brother to calm down immediately, explaining that he was actually a very different person, and that what people said about him was only half true. Then she decided to stop, keeping the rest a secret, that it was Seo Baomi who caught the stalker and saved her. Seo Baomi didn't want rumors to spread that he had been living next to Yeo Go-eun, as people might misinterpret and twist it. Yeo Go-eun promised Seo Baomi she would keep everything secret so she couldn't tell her brother. Minhyuk, taking off the silly rabbit ears from his head, wanted Yeo Go-eun to listen carefully and not interrupt even once. He would never trust that idiot Seo Baomi, even if he died. So if that guy ever tried to get close to her, she had to promise to tell him immediately. Although he hadn't been able to do anything about the stalker, he would never allow Seo Baomi to touch her.